I want to do a couple of things with this election fraud update. First of all, I want to let you know what the New York Post did today. The New York Post has been a very friendly news organization when it comes to President Trump. And they published an op-ed today that was scathing towards the president. If you didn't catch it from last week, Newsmax and Fox News have completely walked back their claims about Dominion voting and any of those voting claims. And then there is this lawsuit that has been filed against Vice President Pence, asking him to go about his duties on January 6th in a different way and seating different electors than were sent by the states. What is going on there? Well, I have the update for you, and I want to share all of that with you, starting out with the New York Post. And as I said, very friendly, and they endorsed the president for a second term, and they are out today telling the president he has to stop.
The headline from the New York Post editorial board this morning says it all. It reads, "Mr. Trump, stop the insanity. You lost the election. Here's how to save your legacy." The newspaper's editorial board writes, "Mr. President, it's time to end this dark charade. If you insist on spending your final days in office threatening to burn it all down, that will be how you are remembered, not as a revolutionary, but as an anarchist holding the match." The board goes on to write that the president should stop thinking about overturning the election and start focusing on the Georgia runoffs. CNN's chief media correspondent Brian Stelter joins us now. Brian, and for those viewers at home that don't understand the president's affinity and his long history with the New York Post, explain the significance of this editorial.
Yeah, this is Rupert Murdoch's New York Post. Rupert and Trump have had a mutually beneficial relationship for many years, especially early on in the Trump years. With Trump in the White House, Rupert Murdoch used Trump in the White House to his business advantage. And of course, Trump used Murdoch for positive press and PR. Furthermore, Trump has read the New York Post. It's been his hometown paper for decades. So when he sees a front page like this, it might sting a little bit. Here's part of what the editorial board says on this morning's front page. "We understand, Mr. President, that you're angry that you lost, but to continue down this road is ruinous. We offer this as a newspaper that endorsed you, that supported you. If you want to cement your influence, even set the stage for a future return, you must channel your fury into something more productive."
Woo! That is as scathing as it gets. And they say right there in that article, we had no problem with you challenging and looking for fraud. We had no problem with you trying to shore up the election and make sure it was legitimate. But you found nothing. You've got nothing. And now you're going to look like the anarchists with the match. And that is absolutely scathing. And as I've told you, it's been my hope from the beginning that when this is all said and done, that those who have supported the president in his claims of election fraud will wake up and realize that this is his go-to, and it has been his go-to for years. He tweeted about election fraud in 2012. Then, did you know that in 2016, when he lost Iowa to Ted Cruz, do you know what he tweeted out? He tweeted out that Ted Cruz cheated in the election. He accused Ted Cruz of election fraud. This is his go-to. This is what he does. This is how he deals with his ego when he loses. And then after winning the Electoral College in 2016, found out he didn't win the popular vote. Again, that hurt his ego. So he made the wild claim that he won the popular vote and millions of people voted illegally. No evidence to support that. And then they actually put together a commission to find the alleged voter fraud. They found nothing. Well, let me restate. They found individual occurrences of voter fraud. And that happens every single election, and it happens for both sides of the aisle. But they did not find any widespread voter fraud. And now here we are, and suddenly the president claims election fraud again, and people can't believe that Trump lost because they see the size of his rallies, and they somehow think that that translates into votes, and they've decided that there's just no way that Trump could have lost. And so suddenly they all became election experts, and then here comes Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, and they roll out these binders of pages of so-called affidavits, and even the Trump administration saying that they have all of these affidavits, yet for some reason not a single case filed by President Trump in a court of law alleges fraud. I want you to hear that again. Not a single case filed by Donald J. Trump in a court of law alleges fraud. Not one. Because you have to have evidence in a court of law. And why is it that the case presented in the court of public opinion is so vastly different than the case presented in a court of law? Now, Sidney Powell's lawsuits, they did allege fraud, but they alleged all kinds of wild stuff. Hugo Chavez's family involved. I mean, crazy stuff. And not one of the legal cases has gone forward. Not one has been accepted. Yet there are still, I don't know how many, I don't know if it's millions, I hope it's not millions, of people who choose to believe that what they've been presented in a, quote, hearing, which is not a legal hearing, that it's gospel. Oh, a mathematician said this. Then you remember that one witness. Remember the one who ended up on Saturday Night Live? The blonde-haired girl, and everybody thought that she had been drinking. Dominion released her job status, like what she was supposed to be doing, what she was hired to do for these election machines that she had intimate knowledge of. Did you hear about this? You know what her job was? She was the glass cleaner. That was the extent of her association. Clean the glass on the machines. Yet somehow she's this profound witness and saw all the voter rolls and all of the... You can present anything you want in the court of public opinion. But guess what happened? And to me, this is why Trump did not allege voter fraud in a court of law. Because these are real companies. Dominion Voting, it's a real company. And they employ real people. And they have real contracts. And what happens when somebody comes out and they slander a real company without evidence? What happens when your company is wronged by somebody who is putting on a show in the court of public opinion? You have legal recourse. And so Dominion Voting and Smartmatic, is that it? Smartmatic? Terrible name. They filed a lawsuit against Newsmax, against Fox News, against Rudy Giuliani for slander. Because there's no evidence to back up any of the claims of who really owns Dominion, of the vote switching, none of it. So did you see this happened just before Christmas? I just want to make sure you saw it if you didn't see it. But Fox News and Newsmax, they started backsliding so fast because they could really lose huge in a court of law, in a slander or a libel lawsuit. And so this is what happened on Newsmax. This was their clarification.
Since Election Day, various guests, attorneys, and elected officials have appeared on Newsmax and offered opinions and claims about Smartmatic and Dominion Systems, both companies that offer voting software in the U.S. And Newsmax would like to clarify its news coverage and note that it has not reported as true certain claims made about these companies. There are several facts our viewers and readers should be aware of. Newsmax has found no evidence that either Dominion or Smartmatic owns the other or has any business association with each other. We have no evidence that Dominion uses Smartmatic software or vice versa. No evidence has been offered that Dominion or Smartmatic used software or reprogrammed software that manipulated votes in the 2020 election. Smartmatic has stated that its software was only used in the 2020 election in Los Angeles, was not used in any battleground state contested by the Trump campaign. Newsmax has no evidence to the contrary. Dominion has stated the company has no ownership relationship with the Pelosi family, the Feinstein family, the Clinton family, Hugo Chavez, or the government of Venezuela. Neither Dominion nor Smartmatic has any relationship with George Soros. Smartmatic is a U.S. company and not owned by the Venezuelan government, Hugo Chavez, or any foreign official or entity. Smartmatic states that it has no operations in Venezuela. While the company did election projects in Venezuela from 2004 to 2017, it states it was never founded by Hugo Chavez, nor did it have a corrupt relationship with him or the Venezuelan government. For more on this, please go to our website at newsmax.com. Read facts about Dominion Smartmatic that you should know.
That's what happens when you make allegations in the public and you have no evidence to support them. There are legal ramifications. And Rudy Giuliani is going to pay big time. I'm telling you, he may have to settle, but his claims and his allegations and the show that he put on in the court of public opinion, he's going to pay. And there's a lot of people in this lawsuit, and they are going to pay. The Fox News retraction was very similar. They chose to have an expert on. They asked all the exact same questions that you just saw them answer on Newsmax. And the key thing to take away, no evidence. This president has millions of people convinced that this was a stolen election. No evidence. He has been alleging election fraud since 2012. No evidence. He has yet to present any allegation of fraud in a court of law. No evidence. This is Jason B. on Periscope. He says, Trump won in a landslide. I don't know if you're being facetious, if you're joking around. Well, I'm looking at some of your other texts. Maybe you are not. You said public opinion means nothing and Fox News is just as fake as CNN. I'm getting a feeling where you're coming from, Jason. It's all been debunked. And the truth of the matter is this. And I know people have a really hard time understanding this. I believe this is the core, Jason, of why most diehard Trump supporters do not believe that Biden could have won. Because they look at Biden, Sleepy Joe, and they look at Trump. Biden campaigned from his basement. Biden is not an inspiring character. He's not a great orator. He doesn't seem to have run on much of a platform. So how in the world could he have beat Donald Trump? And then once you've come to that conclusion, well, now you just have to go out and find evidence to back up your conclusion. Instead of letting the facts guide where you go, and by facts, I mean verifiable facts, facts that could be presented in a court of law. But of course, now those people who don't like the way these lawsuits have been thrown out, they now believe that even the judges are in on the great steal. So the judges, William Barr, Mike Pompeo, the FBI, they're all in on it. And the only truthful person on the face of the earth is Donald J. Trump. Because there's no way he could have lost. Here's what you're missing, Jason. This election was never about Biden and Trump. Never. Never. This election was only about Trump. People voted for him or they voted against him. It's just that simple. And President Trump has this unique ability to create incredible loyalty, fanatical loyalty. Some say cult-like loyalty. In fact, that's what Brandon is saying right now. It's a cult. But the president also has the unique ability to create incredible opposition. And he created more opposition than he created support. And he did it through his only catering to his base. And if you have listened to my show for the last 4 years, I have been saying over and over and over again that you cannot win a re-election with just your base. Because the main reason that he won in 2016 is because Hillary supporters didn't show. The left didn't show. Trump did not have this, he did not outperform what he was projected to gain in votes in 2016. Hillary underperformed. And so that told me that if you go 4 years and you just focus on your base and you don't care about what the other side says, thinks, or does, and all you do is badmouth the other side, you make no attempt at unifying the country at all. Every action is divisive. Then you're going to create more opposition than you create support. And that's what he did. And of course, Jason's bringing up the deep state is real. What about his deals with China? He's now talking about Biden. See, these are all reasons why you don't support Biden. But they have no impact on who voted for him and why. President Trump will go down in history, in my opinion, as the great divider. And that's why if you're on TikTok, you know, if you look at my channel on TikTok, you know that I have been posting videos for months now of the great uniter. A president who saw extreme opposition from the left and great opposition from the media. But he carried himself with dignity. He didn't seek to divide. He sought to unite. His name, Ronald Reagan. Now, there's a reason Trump lost his second term, and that's because he made no effort to unite. He only catered to you, Jason. He made no attempt to cater towards the middle. He made no attempt to cater to anybody else. He called everybody else names. He assaulted every other person. He left incredible ambiguities out there about whether or not he supports certain radical groups. He is the great divider. The difference between Trump and Ronald Reagan? What did Trump win? 230 electoral college votes for his second term? You know how many Ronald Reagan lost in his second term? He lost one state. One state. And again, Jason, you keep making this about Biden. No. It's not about Biden. It's about Trump. It could have been a garbage can running against Donald Trump. He woke up the left. He woke up everybody in the middle. Look at the numbers. He created this massive loyalty. But he also created huge opposition. And I believe, short of Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, that just about anybody would have beaten Donald Trump. And the crazy thing is, Jason, when you talk about this being a rigged election, is that the rest of America actually chose conservatism. There's this huge disparity between those who refused to vote for Trump, but they still voted for conservative Republican candidates. This election was a repudiation of liberalism and socialism in all of the down ballot. That's why we picked up more seats in the House, more Republicans. You can't tell me that we were so adept at that Joe Biden was so adept at rigging an election that they decided to give more conservative seats away. The people just couldn't stomach Trump. That's it. That's it. Jason says, agree, Hillary was a garbage can. You know, Jason, if you look at the numbers from 2016, people just didn't show up for Hillary. And it made Trump think that he could win with just his base. That was never going to be true, ever. Because if you look at the polling, it shows that all those people that didn't show up for Hillary, they thought she was going to win in a landslide because of the polling. So they decided, well, why should we go out and vote? Why should we go out and stand in line? Hillary's locked. She's going to be the next president. So they didn't show up. And then when they were all polled the next week or the next couple of weeks, they all said, had they known, they would have voted. And they all said, we will never make that mistake again. Never. Jeff says on Periscope, he created opposition like the Lincoln Project to vote Trump out. You've never seen this many Republicans come out and be so vocal against, and so many past members of an administration come out and be so vocal against somebody like this. Jason says, I love that you keep posting my comments. Jason, I want you to have a voice here. I'm just going to tell you where I disagree with you. And I love that you have been respectful. By now, so many people would have been calling me names or assaulting my intelligence or my loyalties or something else. And you haven't done that. So I appreciate that. So you are always welcome here. Brandon says, that is how the Dems lost the House and didn't pick up Senate seats. It's absolutely true. If you look at the polling after this election, you will find, and I played it for you in a previous podcast, Joe Biden saying that terms like defund the police and socialism destroyed them down ballot. I have a poll here that I'm going to use in a future podcast. 75% of Americans say they want capitalism over socialism. This was a situation where President Trump was so extreme in his behavior, so extreme in his divisiveness, that people who wanted to support conservatism or capitalism, they couldn't do it. Trump made this about his own character. And it's why we have to be smart as conservatives and Republicans to choose people who can create a strong loyalty on the right, but can also attract people from the middle. And at least not fire up the left to the point where they come out in numbers like we've never seen. Jason asks if I agree with defund the police. We've talked about that on this broadcast many times, and absolutely not. I will entertain discussions about adding to police rosters if you want to add healthcare professionals so that they don't go out to suicide calls on their own and things like that. I will totally talk about that. But I believe our police are underfunded, and that the whole defund the police movement is something that really hurt Democrats this year. And it should. It should have. Absolutely. Dave is continuing to try and encourage me to get back in the running for office. He says JMAC 2024. Oh, Dave, I'm still recovering from the last one. Jason says he lost a cousin as a cop. I'm sorry, Jason. It's heartbreaking. One of the things that we talk about, and I don't know how familiar you are with my broadcast, Jason, but we talk about how we allow the actions of the few in a group to allow us to judge the entire group. So we see these videos of these police officers, and we know, I believe in it, it's much more a thing of the past, but I believe it still exists in certain places, systemic racism within certain police departments. But that doesn't mean that every single police officer is a racist, and it doesn't mean that every organization is racist. And any time that you judge an entire group by the actions of the few, then you're actually committing the very act that you don't want to happen against you. It's like saying, well, all I see of black people is this. And so I'm going to judge their entire group by it. Or like the way so many people judge the Black Lives Matter protests as all being violent, when the truth is that only about 3 to 5% of the people participating in those things ever committed a violent act, and the rest were peaceful. We should not judge that entire group by the actions of the few, nor should we judge all police officers by the actions of the few. We shouldn't allow that to happen on either side. Brad says, here, JMac 2024. Oh, yeah, I'm still recovering, guys. My run for Congress left us kind of flapping in the wind. So let me get on my feet first and support this podcast and let everybody know what we're trying to do and share on this podcast. And maybe then. I do know that we need to choose differently without any question. We need to find people who can generate support from their base, but that's the easy part. But then they can talk to all those independents in the middle, and they can make them feel included, and they can convert people to conservatism, because conservatism requires conversion, unlike liberalism, if you ask me. And then we need to make the people on the left at least feel that they are represented. And as I've said so many times, we've fallen into a trap believing that only our side is right, that we have a monopoly on the truth, and that somehow the Constitution dictates our way of thinking and that it should be forced upon everybody. And honestly, that's what Donald Trump is about, forcing his viewpoints on everybody. And anybody who believes that we should force our viewpoint through civil war or through executive order or anything else, that we should be forcing our viewpoint, there's another word for that. It's called fascism. That the greatness of our country and the greatness of our Constitution is it created a system where all viewpoints can be heard, can be represented, and can be fought for. But somewhere along the line, we were convinced that our side is the Luke Skywalker and their side is the Darth Vader. And it's just not true. It's just not true. Let's see. This is Jeff. Jeff says, Jay, I appreciate how you are always objective and rational about your topics. Thank you, Jeff. I don't know that I'm always objective. I will tell you that I try and operate from the issue outward instead of from my party towards the issue. My principles guide me, and I'm a conservative because conservatism lines up best with my principles after a lot of research and after a lot of life experiences. But when something comes out and it doesn't favor conservatism or it doesn't favor Republicans, then I don't think that we do anybody a service by denying it. To me, truth has got to be truth. And we don't always have it. Jason says Trump gave the power to the states. Jason, I love a lot of things that Trump did. I actually like the tax reform. I like the deregulation. I like the Supreme Court justices. But I think that short of Operation Warp Speed and the initial travel ban, I think his performance on COVID will go down in history as one of the worst presidential leadership actions ever in our nation's history. And I think his divisive language and behavior divided this country like we have not seen in a very, very, very long time. That is unfortunate. Brandon says the right represents their corporate donors using Jesus and the Constitution as false idols. Brandon, you are generalizing quite a bit. Both sides receive money from corporations. Both sides. And you could easily say, well, the left represents labor unions and whatever else. I choose not to get involved in those discussions. You do know, if you've listened to me, Brandon, you know that anytime people say Trump represents Christ, I go crazy, because to me that is an outrageous statement. Or that God wants Trump to be president. And to all those people, I always say the same thing. If God wanted to choose our presidents, then he wouldn't have put in the Constitution. Bottom line. Bottom line. Wow, Brandon. It's like you and Jason are going at it. States were a mess. State rule is madness. No, I totally disagree with you. You have to remember the Constitution is not a definition of our rights. The Constitution is a definition of federal rights. That the Constitution is really the states saying, okay, the independent states saying, okay, there are certain things that only a federal government can do, so we're going to give up a small portion of our authority to the federal government. But we want that authority to be limited, and that's what the Constitution does. It limits federal authority. And the 10th Amendment says everything else goes back to the states. So if you think that that is madness, then I guess you think the Constitution is madness? Is that what you think? I don't know. All right, I think that I had some more prepared to you, but I think I will save that for a podcast tomorrow. I want to thank all of you. I love it, Jason and Brandon and everybody else. I love it when we get differing opinions. I hope that you know and understand that this is a place where we can disagree with each other, but we don't need to attack. And if only Trump carried himself the way that so many of you have carried yourselves today, he might be the president for another 4 years. He might. But that ship has sailed. Oh, did I tell you about the Pence lawsuit? I didn't. We got so sidetracked, I didn't tell you about the Pence lawsuit. Okay, let's do this quickly, okay? Many of you have seen that Mike Pence is being sued, but in order to force him to count the alternate set of electors on January 6th, when he counts the electoral votes. Okay, let me give you the simplified version of what happens on January 6th. On January 6th, Congress is going to get together and they're going to certify the Electoral College votes. Okay, the vice president has a role in that, but it is a ceremonial role. He just counts the votes. He doesn't get to dispute the votes. He doesn't get to decide which votes are real and which votes are not. His role is completely ceremonial, okay? He has no authority whatsoever in this regard. If a member of Congress and a member of the Senate challenge the Electoral College votes of any state, then both houses will get together on their own and they will debate for 2 hours for each state that is contested. And it looks like that's going to happen. But then they're going to vote. And they're going to vote in the House and in the Senate. And in that case, you know what's going to happen. The House is going to vote to keep the current Electoral College the way it is. The Senate, who knows what they will do, but my bet is they'll stick with the Electoral College for lack of evidence of any reason not to. So this is going to be ceremonial and then symbolic. But there's no way on January 6th that this gets overturned. There's just no way. A lot of people get confused and they say, no, this will just be voted on in the House and each state only gets one vote. That's a separate issue. That only kicks in when one candidate does not get more than 270 Electoral College votes. Okay? So that's not going to happen here. So anything that is contested on January 6th, the House and the Senate will vote, and they vote according to their membership. So you can already tell what's happening. But a lot of people believe that there are these alternate electors who were sent by states, and this lawsuit is seeking to give Vice President Pence the ability to choose those alternate electors instead of the electors that were sent officially. And this, my friends, is just nonsense, because those alternate electors are imaginary. They're not real because they weren't chosen in any official capacity. This was the party in each of these states saying, well, we're just going to send our own electors. Now, some states have laws that allow for an alternate set of electors. So the governor sends one set, the legislature sends another. And that would be a contested election. And people have confused what is happening now with a contested election. But see, that the problem is that no House legislature chose these alternate electors. They just decided to write their name down on a piece of paper and say, we're alternate electors. Most state legislatures were not even in session when these people decided to be alternate electors. So there are so many issues with this. A, it's not a contested election. All of the electors have been chosen and assigned, and President-elect Biden gets 306 of them. These so-called alternate electors are not official. They're not real in any capacity. And the vice president has no ability to decide which ones he counts. His hand is forced by that terrible Constitution. So this is, one more time, just a show. I don't know what the show is for. I don't know what the end game of the show is for. It continues to perpetuate the myth of election fraud. But in my opinion, because there is no election fraud being adjudicated in a court of law, that even the major networks have had to come out and say these election fraud claims are hooey. If you don't have that election fraud, if you've been claiming election fraud since 2012, if you accused Ted Cruz of election fraud in 2016 in a GOP primary, then the person trying to carry out the coup is you, Mr. President. And that's the truth. That's the truth. On that note, thank you so much for joining me. Again, my hope is to join you every single day. Send me any questions or comments you have in the comments. I will gladly add those to a future podcast. And please take a minute and help support this podcast. Scan the QR code that you can see on the screen right there, or go to jmcfarland.com. You can see my website address and make a monthly donation or a one-time donation. That will help me bring this fearless honesty and help sort through these issues every single day. If you like what I do, please help and support this podcast. And also, I've got 2 new online training courses, both from both of my books, Joyful Union and Joyful Parents. If you want to check those out, those are at jmcfarland.com as well.